I'm sharing my top takeaways from the return of the blue and red today on Locked On Bills.
You are Locked On Bills, your daily Buffalo Bills podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Bills Mafia? It's Joe Marino, author of the Herd Mentality Substack, co-host of the Locked On NFL Scouting Podcast, co-host of the NFL First Read Podcast, and I'm your host of Locked On Bills. Want to thank you for making Locked On Bills your first listen every day, and a big welcome and shout out to our everydayers. You know who you are. Those of you who never miss a single episode, I appreciate y'all being here very, very much. I'd also like to invite you to subscribe or follow for free on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Well, folks, welcome in. I spent my Friday evening at Highmark Stadium taking in the return of the blue and red, and on this episode, I want to share with you my top takeaways, and later on in the episode, I want to kind of recap my week in New York and share some of my thoughts on being in the area. I know everyone's curious. What did I eat? What did I think of it? We'll talk about that here later on today's episode. As you can probably tell, not my normal setup, also not the hotel that I was staying at in Rochester. I am in my Aunt Karen's dining room kitchen area. So these wonderful decoration, this really cool bird behind me, that's courtesy of Aunt Karen, who's been kind enough to open her home up to me and my brother as we close out the week in New York here and head back to North Carolina tomorrow morning. But as I said, I was one of 39,000 plus people at Highmark Stadium to watch the Bills practice the return of the blue and red. Always a really fun event, and kind of hit me sitting in the stands thinking, this is going to be one of the last times I ever step into this building. I'm sure you'll probably have a very similar thought at some point this season as well. But that was a record amount of people that attended the return of the blue and red, and it's super cool to have been part of it. So let's get into what stood out to me. I do want to start with some notes on injuries and participation. 3 players didn't participate due to it being a veteran rest day. Those players are Tre'Davious White, Matt Milano, and Joey Bosa. Other players that did not practice due to injury, Curtis Samuel at wide receiver, Terrell Bernard at linebacker, Cole Bishop at safety. So we're starting to stack days now with Cole Bishop and this quad injury. Of course, Maxwell Hairston, he will miss some time. He didn't practice. Dorian Williams still out. Cedric Van Pran Granger still out. Alec Anderson, who had the procedure on his knee, that shouldn't be a big issue, but he'll have to get back from that. Spencer Brown, who has been activated but did not practice. And then, of course, wide receiver Caden Prather. You had 2 players that left the practice due to injury. Wide receiver Khalil Shakir, looks like he had some type of an ankle deal. We'll see what the severity is there. Hopefully that's nothing, because obviously he's a huge part of this offense. The other player that left practice and did not return, linebacker Shaq Thompson. And, you know, the Bills were down 3 linebackers, their top 3 linebackers, in Terrell Bernard, Matt Milano on a rest day, and then, of course, Dorian Williams. And so Shaq Thompson's had a really good camp to this point, and you figure he was going to be a big part of the rep scheme for this practice, but he left and did not return. In terms of what stood out on the field, as we are now moving past the participation notes, I thought some players stood out. And the first player I want to talk about is the player I've talked about pretty much all week. That's Keon Coleman, because the Keon coaster was in full effect in this practice. He started off the session with 2 pretty egregious drops. He was wide open on a couple of in-cuts, and he let that ball go right through his hands. They were both good, accurate throws. He didn't catch them. But then he makes 3 extremely dynamic plays down the field on vertical routes where he made great adjustments to the football and showed that body control, those hands, the things that get you excited about Keon Coleman, including one of those plays being made over Christian Benford. And that's tough to do. Christian Benford doesn't give up much. And Keon Coleman came down with a big-time catch down the field. And those were vintage Keon Coleman, if there is such a thing. I know he's a young player, but when you think about the guy he was at Michigan State and Florida State and some of the plays he made it as a rookie, high pointing the ball and making those really dynamic body control type things at the catch point. You saw that in full display, but again, not without the 2 drops that happened before that. The player on defense, and I think several players on defense stood out, but the one guy that I thought really was the best player on the field defensively, it's Ed Oliver, who I think has had a really good week. I've had a chance to watch 5 practices now this week, and Ed Oliver has really stood out to me. And this defense has changed a lot. When you watch it in camp, there's a lot of different approaches to how the Bills are playing defense. A lot of 5 and 6 man pressures, a lot of man coverage, and it's a more aggressive style defense. And I think that benefits a guy like Ed Oliver, who's a penetration style player that's going to get in the backfield, that's going to be athletic. When you're really just setting up one-on-ones, right? That's the whole point of 5-man pressures, is to get one-on-ones across the board. It really highlights a player like Ed Oliver and his ability to be disruptive. And that was a theme of this practice. It's been a theme all week, as you do see this defense start to subscribe to a whole lot more of an attack-oriented approach. And again, Ed Oliver, I thought, was probably the best defensive player on the field, but I thought some other guys really stood out in this practice. Javon Solomon in a big way. And think about that infrastructure, 5-man pressures, allowing him to be an attack-oriented player where, no, he's not going to be a dynamic edge setter, but when he can play one-on-one and play in space a little bit and use the athleticism, you saw that show up as a pass rusher. You saw it show up on some of the perimeter runs where he was able to work laterally to the football. Even a couple of shorter passes, like screen passes, Javon Solomon was very active in being disruptive in that capacity as well. So I thought he had a terrific practice. Another young player that was awesome, Landon Jackson. I was kind of waiting for one of these young defensive linemen to really pop. And I think they've all had moments. Deion Walker's had moments. TJ Sanders has had some moments. Landon Jackson has had moments. But in this practice, I thought he really put good reps out there with his ability to really collapse the width of the pocket, but then also disengage, right? He's very good at kind of compressing the pocket, but then when he gets that to the point where it's time to deconstruct the block and get off of it, you can see that length and that power show up. And I thought you saw several reps of him being able to do that in this practice. The last guy I want to shout out defensively is Greg Rousseau. He is batting down footballs at a really, really high rate. But I think that speaks to this style of defense and what that unlocks in Greg Rousseau, where you're attack-oriented, you're compressing this pocket, you're getting one-on-ones across the board, and Rousseau's able to collapse, and then he gets his hands up in these throwing lanes, and he's batting down passes left and right. And that continued on Friday night at Highmark Stadium. Ray Davis, we got to talk about him, and not because of anything he did running the football. He was fine running the football, but we learned that he's the Bills' emergency kicker. Tyler Bass was in pads. He kicked a little bit, but not necessarily full speed type kicking. It was a lot of just plant and kick type stuff. And we know he had some pelvic soreness this week. So Ray Davis got an opportunity to kick a few field goals. They weren't super long, about 30 yards, and he went 2 for 3. He missed the first one, but then he drilled the next 2. And so if you're ever wondering if it comes down to it in a game and Tyler Bass is injured, who's going to kick a field goal for the Bills? I think Ray Davis is going to be that guy. So that was kind of fun to see that play out. Speaking of fun, Josh Allen coming out in the red helmet. And I was suspicious that it would be either the red helmet or the potato logo potentially on a helmet. He comes out in the red helmet, and it looks so good. It looks so good. And unfortunately, he wore it with the red jersey, so we didn't get the full effect of the blue jersey with the white pants and the red helmet, which I'm excited to see. But there was something about seeing that helmet on that field on Josh Allen that took me to quite the place, and I'm looking forward to that last game, the regular season finale against the Jets, where the Bills will be in those uniforms. Josh kind of gave us a little tease, and they looked terrific. Now, I will say this about Josh Allen. Very light practice for Josh. He came out and did individual drills. He did 7-on-7, and that was it. It was the Mike White, Mitch Trubisky show from that point on. And I continue to think, just based on the 5 practices that I've watched this week, that Mike White has been a little better than Mitch Trubisky but I think the preseason games are going to go a long way in kind of sorting out that QB2 battle. I'll say this. Some interesting things happened on the field, but it was mostly a quiet practice. I thought it was a bit uneventful. You didn't get Josh Allen doing team stuff. You had some heavy hitters and Trey White and Matt Milano and Joey Bosa not practicing. You had all the injuries. And so it was cool to see a lot of young players, a lot of depth players, guys that are competing for jobs. But if you showed up at Highmark Stadium and wanted to see the stars be stars, you didn't get that. They were definitely conservative with how they unleashed some of the, higher profile players on the team. So those are my thoughts on the return of the blue and red. And coming up next, I want to just recap a little bit my week in New York, tell you some of the highlights of the week. So, folks, we'll do that here next. Be sure to stick with me. You ever wish managing your money felt easier? With Monarch Money, it can. Whether you're growing your savings or planning for a big purchase, Monarch puts you in the driver's seat. It's like having your own personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money is more than just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. So in addition to managing your money, you're also building wealth. When I first started using Monarch, I realized just how much I was spending on food delivery. Now I budget smarter and I save more. It's surprising how much certain spending habits can add up, and Monarch makes it easy to identify them. So take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNFL for half off your first year. It's time to fuel up and turn it up with 5-Hour Energy Transfusion. It brings the bold grape, ginger, and lime flavor of your favorite golf drink, minus the alcohol, into a quick, energizing shot. Whether you're sinking birdies or just making memories with friends, this one's a hole-in-one for your energy game. Let's be honest, some days on the golf course or off it, you just need that extra boost to stay sharp and energized. And golf is all about good times with good people and good flavors, of course. The grape, ginger, lime flavor gives you the best parts of your clubhouse go-to without having to chase down that beverage cart. If you go to 5hourenergy.com today, that is the number 5hourenergy.com, you can use my promo code LOCKEDONGOLF to receive 20% off your order. This offer is only valid until September 30th on one order and cannot be used with other promotions. The code is not good on subscription orders. Whether you're meeting up with friends or trying to turn 18 holes into 36, get the energizing boost you need to power through. Order transfusion-flavored 5-Hour Energy shots today. Well, folks, welcome back. As always, when I finish up a week or any amount of time in Western New York or the New York area, I guess Rochester, is that Western New York? I think it is, but don't yell at me if that's wrong. I know I'm a little loose on that type of stuff. It's definitely east of Buffalo, but I spent 6 days in Rochester, and then like 2 in Tonawanda, Buffalo area. And I had a great week and so many highlights, obviously being on the field, taking in Bill's practices, getting a lot of firsthand observations, which I've shared throughout the week. And I'm going to kind of continue to share a lot of that in the coming days as I weave that into, my renewed perspective of this team. All of that was amazing, but the event that we had at the Focus Theater on Wednesday of this past week was incredible. We were able to be part of a fundraiser for Miss Julie's School of Beauty, which is a cosmetology school that is completely dedicated to victims of sex trafficking. And these ladies go and they are able to get a cosmetology degree, and then they get an opportunity to interview for permanent jobs. And it's an awesome cause. It's an awesome organization. And the place was packed. It's sold out. And got to meet just so many people that came from all over the area, people from North Tonawanda, people from Amherst, people from, of course, Rochester. It was a great event. Big shout out to Keith and the team over there at the Focus Theater for putting it on. We had like an hour of kind of a tailgate theme. There was a bar, there was some food, there was cornhole, and just getting a chance to shake hands and meet a bunch of people. And then we did like an hour and a half or so of content where I went through and I shared some observations from training camp, and then we did Q&A for a long time. It was an amazing event, and looking forward to how we can build on that next year. So that was a big time highlight. And then Thursday night had a chance to meet up with Pat Moran and Jeremy White. at Sunny Reds and was part of a live taping of Talking Buffalo. And I've done several of these with Pat Moran, and it was cool for Jeremy to be there as well and be part of that show. Pat gave us a chance to talk about Bill Squad and kind of the origins of Bill Squad with Jeremy and Jerry Ostrowski, and a little bit about our careers in media, but also some thoughts on the Bills as well. So that was a ton of fun. And speaking of people from all over the place, I met a couple people from Spartanburg, someone from Vermont, of course, a lot of people from Western New York as well. So that was an amazing event. And of course, the food was absolutely delicious, and looking forward to my next opportunity to collaborate with Patrick Moran. Now, one thing that I got a lot of questions about while I was up here is what's going on with the Rally on the River? You haven't said anything about it. Well, now that this week is behind me, I'm happy to tell you that I am going to be part of the Rally on the River again this year. It'll be the day before the Bills play the Ravens. That's Saturday before. Awesome event at Buffalo River Works. We'll share more details here in the coming weeks. But yes, I will be part of that, and I hope that you will make that part of your kickoff weekend as well. That's Saturday before the Bills host the Ravens for the season opener. It's an amazing event. I'm looking forward to being part of that again this year. One thing that was a little bit different this year for me compared to previous years, I think this is like my fourth year where I've spent a week in the area for camp. And this is finally the year where when I was out in Rochester, it wasn't just go to practice, go back to the hotel, do content, and then, rinse and repeat, right? I actually got to explore Rochester a little bit, and I was able to enjoy some of the local cuisine. I enjoyed meals at the Old Stone Tavern, Jeremiah's Tavern, the distillery, and I thought the wings at the distillery were actually pretty good. I wasn't expecting that. The Village Bakery had an amazing breakfast sandwich there, so I'm a big fan of the Village Bakery. Salvatore's for pizza. Also hit up the Bar Bill out in Rochester. And look, the Bar Bill out in Rochester is good, but you could tell it's a little step down from what you get out in East Aurora. But had some good food in Rochester, explored a little bit. There's some really cool parts of Rochester that has some really unique architecture. I really enjoyed being out that way, except for the part where earlier in the week it was pretty hot. I was looking forward to escaping the heat, and that didn't happen quite to the degree I was hoping until later in the week. This Thursday, Friday was beautiful, mid-70s. That was what I was more looking for in my time up here in New York. And then I came back to Western New York and had a ton of great experiences going out to eat. And actually I came to Western New York for a little bit and then went to Rochester and then came back. And let me tell you where I ate. We went to 911 Tavern, which I will continue to tell you is the best traditional buffalo chicken wing that you will ever eat. And got a chance to have those. Went to Kelly's Corner. That was my first time at Kelly's Corner. Different wings. What I can appreciate about their wing sauce is that it's just a little different than kind of your traditional styles. I can appreciate the unique flavor that they have. It's a tier 1 wing for me. Of course, Sunny Reds, which I love. Tried Adolph's for the first time. That was really good. I got their hot, and it's definitely on the hotter side of hot, but I don't regret that. It was really, really delicious. And then had Carbone's for the pizza, which is right across the street from Adolph's, which I didn't know that was going to be the case. And then, of course, I hit up Lenova. And I know there's a lot of controversial takes about Lenova, but if you go to the one on West Ferry, it will hit every single time. I don't know about all the other ones, especially don't go to the ones at Highmark Stadium. That is an imposter. And it should be illegal that they sell that pizza at Highmark Stadium and put it in a Lenovo's box, because it ain't right. I don't encourage you to eat that at all. But if you get to the one on West Ferry and the west side of Buffalo, I think you will enjoy that quite a bit. So great time as always in New York. Everyone is always so kind and welcoming. You understand very quickly why it's called the city of good neighbors. And everyone was kind and accommodating. I always love the sense of community that I get every time I come to the area. There's always things going on. People are outside. People are always talking, and they're interacting. And I don't always see that where I go places. And I just always gain such a deep appreciation for the sense of community that exists here in Western New York. All right, folks, I'm going to end this recording so I can get to bed and get on the road on Saturday morning. And obviously we'll have content coming your way all next week. You know the drill. We're a daily podcast on the Buffalo Bills, so don't miss anything. Make sure that you're subscribed. Would love it if you took a second to rate, review, and share the podcast. Have a great rest of your day. Go Bills, and I look forward to catching up with you again real soon.